Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the I Am 1-2 podcast with your host, Christopher Cohn. With me, as always, in the studio is the man that makes all of the things happen in here. Otherwise, we would not have a podcast. Mr. Dan the Man, everybody. Welcome to the podcast, Dan.
Thank you. Welcome to everybody to the show, too. You get Joe Rogan's got Jamie.
Yep.
And my Meat Eater podcast that I like so well has Phil. I kind of giggle at I get to play that role over here.
But they ain't got no Dan the Man.
Nope,
Come on now.
They don't have
Let's
a
admit
Dan
it.
the Man.
Pull that up, Jamie. We need to see Dan the Man.
When Theo Vaughn says, "Give me some help, Jamie."
It's awesome. Well, welcome to the podcast, folks. In case you're just joining us the first time, this is an all things recovery podcast where we're trying to give the world tools and offer you some ways to improve your life for free. And maybe you can pass this on to someone else and help out their life too. So today we're going to talk about swearing your way to spirituality. What is he talking about? Oh, he's always talking about crazy stuff. Here we go. Dan was telling me this factoid about YouTube that if you cuss excessively in the first 2 minutes, you get flagged. But after that, apparently, it's free range. Is that basically what?
Something like that? And get particularly one of the guys said the other day and he was doing this, and he was just using the F word a bunch. But he waited. He said, "I got to wait till after that, or I'll get demonetized."
Well, we're not making money here, so
Yeah.
what are they going to do to us?
Yeah.
Again, this is not about being rude or about being crude, or you'll understand by the time the podcast's over, but it will help you, I think, in your recovery journey. So let's begin. Let's get right down to facts. So one of the things that happened to me and you that we don't think about since we were born is that people have been controlling us in so many different ways, right? None of us got to choose our family system. None of us got to choose our particular parents, nor the religion that they belonged to, the politics that they identified with, their culture they identified with. We were just thrown in to the situation. And because the family system overwhelms the individual, because you got to fit in to be part of the family system, you end up being controlled in your language. And you end up being controlled by what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, whether or not you're cultured and you speak in a certain way. We certainly in my family were trained very well to be polite and yes ma'am, no sir, and all that stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there is. I'm just saying it's another way of putting limits on who you are in a way and your freedom of expression, which we're big on in this country. For good or bad, whatever, I'm just making an observation, and I think it's worth looking at. Because then they send us off to schools, and they're going to shape your language. If you go to public school versus private or Catholic school, there's going to be a difference in how your language is. And then you're sent to church, and they're definitely going to try to control your language. And I went to a church that was very restrictive in telling me what I needed to say in order to approach my higher power. A lot of these and thous, and you must speak in a certain prayer if you're going to access your parent, access the thing that created you. And in fact, it was even worse than that. I had to sit every Sunday and say out loud with everybody in the congregation, "Lord, I am not worthy to receive you, but only say the word and I shall be healed." That was a requirement. And so I'm saying I'm not worthy to receive the love of my parent, my cosmic parent, the thing that just wants me to have everything in abundance, wants me to be happy as I could possibly be on this planet. And they're telling me I cannot go to this parent and be me. I have to hide that part of me that maybe cusses with the fellas, maybe curses outside of school, but I have to hold and hide all those secrets back and dress up every Sunday. Oh, but I'm not worthy to receive you. And I actually had a patient who went through a struggle with that, saying that they felt a block, a gap, a separation from their higher power, and they felt a self-esteem, a not worthiness, a guilt and shame. And I'm like, well, you identified with that religion that we both went to, and I want to remind you that that's what you said for how many years now? And they said, I don't know, 40, 50, 60. So it was a long time for them. And I said, that's called programming. Do not underestimate the power of your programming. Call me crazy, but you'll call me later and say, you were right, because most people do, whether I sponsor them or they're my patient. So having to constantly suppress what I really wanted to say or perhaps needed to say at times, right? Because there's that big question mark. Where do I stand up for myself and set my boundary? Where do I speak my truth and it's worth it and I might be valued, or it'll just fall on deaf ears and it's not worth it? Again, tricky things we all have to navigate on a daily basis, right? So for me, it meant that I began hiding secrets. I began hiding who I was. I began hiding the things I was up to. And that's a formula that began early in my life before drinking and drugging even became a part. I had lots of secrets, and I didn't feel like I could share them with people. I didn't feel like I could speak my truth. And as far as I understand what recovery stands for, you can read that blue book cover to cover, and it has lots of stuff in there about selfishness, self-centeredness, and this and that. But the one word he emphasizes the most, I believe, is honesty, self-honesty, rigorous honesty. He felt so strongly about it, he put it in the first paragraph 3 times of the thing that we ended up reading at every meeting from here since the beginning of the recovery. And so I think he's telling us one of the major goals of recovery is taking down all these masks and these false fronts we have up and just being who you are. Now, I'm not talking about a license to go out and be rude in inappropriate situations. We'll cover that. But I am talking about, are you bottlenecked in some ways by some teachings, programming from your past that is holding you back in your personal recovery, and maybe you don't even identify with it as part of who you really are today. Maybe it's what your parents believed, maybe it's what your church believed, and maybe you question it in recovery or saying, I don't really know. I don't think I agree with that. I think I feel differently about it today, because that is the cool thing about recovery. You get to change your mind. You can totally change your mind at any time about anything you feel something about. And I watch people do that all the time about politics, about their job, about their relationship, and just say, I changed my mind. I don't think I agree with this anymore. So, where did my journey start? I found myself in my very early recovery. And like I said, I was brought up to be polite. I was brought up to act the part of a gentleman. That's a big thing we get in the South. You're going to be a gentleman to your lady and all that jazz. And then we had that other side of us where we let it all hang out, right? But we're not going to show that to anybody. But I found myself at the Alcoholics Anonymous clubhouse in Minneapolis, Minnesota called 2218. And it's a giant, and I repeat, giant mansion. You would think back in the days that Rockefellers or somebody lived there. And it was purchased and turned into an Alano Club, which is a clubhouse, and was broke ground on, or they introduced the club at 1942. And I looked it up today. It's the oldest continuously running club in the world for AA, in the world, that has never moved. Now, we have a token club here in town. Recently, they had to move to a new location. This thing's never moved. It's been there since 1942. Bill Wilson spoke there. Dr. Bob spoke there on a separate occasion. So it's got a lot of history. I didn't know that. I didn't care. I'm just a dumb newcomer, and I'm going there because it's like 5 blocks from my house, and I didn't have no car. So I found myself at these meetings, and I was probably spouting off in one of them about the higher power stuff and how these people push it too much, and I don't agree with it. Because I had so many wounds from my church, and I had so much pain, and I didn't know that at the time. I just knew anger, because anger is always your first threshold, and then underneath that's all your hurt and pain. Defensiveness, I could say, is above that. Defensiveness and anger, and then hurt and pain is underneath. So I was probably spouting off that night, and I'm standing out on the porch afterwards just smoking my cigarette, trying to mind my own damn business. And I really don't want to talk to anybody, because that's the way a newcomer is. You're so uncomfortable in your own skin. You're just like, just leave me be. Just let me have my nicotine. And some old timer was eyeballing me on the side of my eye, and I'm trying to ignore him as much as I can by looking at the girls and trying to act cool and show them, hey, talk to me, I'm cool. And because I smoke. Stupid. And he ends up coming over, and I could feel it. I could feel he had a bead on me, and I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. And I'm ready to blow him out of the water. I just don't want to hear it. And he just comes over and he says, hey, how you doing? I was like, oh, my God. Like a little John Denver looking dude, but short, And he's like an older guy. And he's like, I heard you talk about the higher power in there, and sounds like you got some anger and stuff. And that's okay. I felt that way too. It's all right. And I'm like, good. Is that your point? We're done. Goodbye. I was really giving him no quarter. I didn't want to hear any of it. And I'm just sitting there going, smoking, ignoring him. And he goes, I just had a question for you, though. Have you ever told him about it? you ever tell your higher power how pissed off you are? And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? There's the first cuss word. Ding, ding, ding. YouTube, nab us. What is he talking about? I had no idea. And he says, well, you need to go home tonight. And he started laying it out for me. He says, go home, and you're all alone. You're not going to disturb anybody. I want you to just grab a pillow you can punch the shit out of, or throw things around your room that won't break. And I want you to scream and yell and have it out with your higher power about everything you're mad about, everything you're upset about. Just get it out. He can take it. And I'm like, what? And so then he mirrored it for me. He said, you go home and say, fuck you, motherfucker. And I don't agree with this, and I don't agree with that. And he meant for me to go through my list. And every alcoholic has a list of the unfair and unjust things that maybe rightly, wrongly, but I believe firmly happened to me. And I have been carrying on my back in my trash can. And I'm denying that anything's bothering me because somebody asked me how I'm doing. And I'm going, I'm fine. No, I'm good. Man, I'm good. I'm smoking my cigarette. I'm good. He said, just get it out. Just tell him. And I listened to him, and I couldn't believe I said these in return, but it was my programming for my church. It says, well, yeah, but I mean, that's kind of blasphemous, isn't it, man? And he looked at me, and he got this little grin, and he goes, you've been talking to him like that for years already, if in your head at least, not maybe not your mouth. I'm just asking you to be honest about it. And that's it. That's all I wanted from me. He disappeared into the wind. I've never seen the guy since. Never saw him at another meeting. It was one of those Eskimos that we talk about in the program. He showed up and he pointed the way. And I don't know why I did this. I'm not a guy that follows directions in early recovery. And I went home and I said, my roommate's not home. She's out at her meeting. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to just do this. And I just let it go. And it felt goofy. I felt self-conscious. I'm like, why am I doing this? This is dumb. But I'm just going to say, I don't like the fact my dad was a fucking drunk. And I don't like the fact that he abandoned me and you abandoned our family and we were poor and we had to move around. I had to go to these different schools. And fuck you if you're there. These people in school told me to pray for you when I went to Catholic school. And you didn't show up. And you let all this shit happen. You let my mom get beat up. You let all this stuff happen. And I just started laying it out, baby. I just puked it. As we have a tool in our program to puke it out in your fifth step. And that was it. I got it out. I didn't feel the heavens break. I didn't feel the clouds part. I just was like, okay, we're done. But I did notice one thing, that I slept very soundly that night. I do remember having a great night's sleep. It's perfect. It's beautiful. And then I noticed about 2 weeks from there, it didn't happen overnight. I had totally forgotten about the whole thing. And I was at work, and I was working in a warehouse. It was a cosmetic jewelry warehouse. So it's cheap jewelry, but it looks nice. It looks like it could be real. And we're in the warehouse shipping it out to stores. And the guy next to me was getting on my last nerve. And he wasn't really doing anything wrong. But, when you're in a little recovery, somebody just smacking their lips or doing something goofy can just set you off. And I was sitting there, and out of nowhere, I think I said the first genuine prayer I've said in my recovery on my own, which was, Jesus Christ, please, God, help me not kill this motherfucker. I need this job. I don't need to punch him, but I'm about to. So help me. And even I kind of was kicked back by it. Because usually I only say prayers in emergency circumstances. Like I said a prayer when I got to my halfway house that I need a job so they don't kick me out. But that was a foxhole atheist prayer. This was a genuine talking to him and using my language, cussing, and just being real. And it was like the ice had thawed, the dam had broke, and finally the channel was back open. And I have to tell you, I wish I could shout this tool out to the world, because more people out there are blocked. And that's the word our co-founder, Bill Wilson, says in the fourth and fifth step, that we're blocked from our higher power, calamity, worship of other things. But our history is what he's really talking about. And we're just not being honest to get it off our chest. And then suddenly I started having a dialogue with this power I didn't even believe was there. I didn't even believe it existed, and I'm talking to it on the daily. I'm not just getting up going, give me silver, blah, 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 because that's what I was told to do. I started talking to it. I'm like, this day sucks, dude. Why is this such a bad fucking day? Why are these people getting on my damn nerves? Why the fuck can't something good happen for me, God? Why do I have to have this shit sobriety? Why can't I just go do my career? And I'm talking to it. I'm building my active conscious contact and my relationship with this power of my greater understanding, whatever it is. And that is the goal of recovery. Our goal in recovery is not to do these and thous and be devout. Our goal in recovery is to have an active, alive relationship with this power, that I actually believe it's there for me, and I'm going to talk to it like it's there for me and be real. And I always use that analogy. If you were the parent of a child that you hadn't seen in a long time, would you want them to call you up and say, "Our Father who art in heaven," then hang up? Or would you like them to talk to you about what's going on in their life? And I know a lot of people that are suffering from that. I know a lot of people that are suffering from religious persecution, where they feel guilty if they're talking to God, either in their own voice, own words without prayers, or if they're cussing for sure. They feel like it's not okay. But I'll just tell you my truth. For anybody out there that might be helpful to, go out in the woods, take some dishes, shoot them with your gun, but yell and scream about every injustice, unjust, unfair thing that's happened to your child and you on this world. And why did it have to be that way? And where were you? Where were you, man? And I'm telling you, nothing else in my life had worked to break that dam, to make me understand what it was like to have a personal relationship with something. It was always what they were teaching me, and I could never have a personal relationship with that. So that's where I found my higher power. So I personally believe I found my higher power by cussing. And I know I will try to say that in the short time you'll get at a meeting if you're the speaker that night, and you'll try to jump into that story real fast, and you leave people with this weird look on their face where they're kind of like, "Are you talking about cussing out God? What? You can't cuss out God." And, we're here in the South, basically, so you got to be careful. And it's like, oh, my God, no, I'm not talking about cussing out God. Although, if you got to. Another tool I was used for that, for anybody else that might have some extra resistance. And it was a fabulous analogy. I love it. This idea that we can offend God through our behaviors or words, it's another ego trip of the human beings, thinking that we can somehow have power over a power that is greater beyond anything we can comprehend. That what I do or what I say is possibly going to set this power off, and they're going to lose their shit because I have that much power to make God do that. Well, the analogy is, imagine you're walking through the ocean one day and you might step on something, you don't know what it is, and you're like, "Oh, that's weird." And then you happen to stop and you look back. And you look back, there's this tiny little speck down there, and you can so barely see it underneath the water. But when you look way down there, you notice it's this little amoeba. And what happened was you stepped on the amoeba's house, and you destroyed it. You didn't mean to. You were just passing through. And this little amoeba is now yelling at you, and he's giving you the finger. And you're like, "Whoa, dude, what's up?" But you're looking at this thing, and as much as you want to get pissed off, what are you doing? You're laughing. You're going, "Oh, look at the cute little amoeba. He's so mad." Just like a little puppy that's upset about something, right? It doesn't have any power over you. It doesn't have any means to do anything to you. It's just giving you the finger. And you're just going, "Well, that's kind of ridiculous, but it's funny too." Again, this idea that I could possibly offend a higher power. Again, they're old teachings, just things we're supposed to challenge in recovery. All right, so why are we bringing this up today? Because some meetings disagree with the policy of speaking your truth. And I am okay with that in certain circumstances, and I'm not okay with that in certain circumstances, so we're going to break it down. Look, if we have a tradition in our program that every meeting is autonomous. That's a fancy word, meaning that every meeting is allowed to handle their business in their own way. I always tell my patients, guys, nobody's running this thing. Nobody's in charge. There's no AA police, although some old-timers think they are part of the AA police. AA police, you shouldn't be doing that in a meeting. But literally, I tell my patients, if you want to start a nudist meeting, the first one in America tonight, AA can't say anything about it. And if you require people to take off their clothes to come to your meeting, AA can't say anything about it. That's your meeting. That's a beautiful thing. So if I go to a meeting and they say upright, "In this group, we prefer that you not curse while you're sharing your stories," I would be like, "Okay, cool. That's like a Japanese person asking me to take off my shoes before I come in the house. I'm not going to walk in with my muddy boots. I will respect your house rules. I probably won't come back to your meeting." That's my choice. But I'm not going to shit on your meeting, because you have a right to run your meeting any way you want to. There's plenty of people that come to my home group and they go, we don't like the silliness and the joking around you guys doing here. And then meanwhile, one of my newcomers said this week, I really like the camaraderie and everybody's having a good time, and it really impressed me that everybody's loose and supporting each other. See what I'm saying? Different strokes, different folks. So go where you feel best. Thank God there's tons of meeting out there, right? But I don't like when a meeting might put it on a sign, and that sign says something to the effect, which I've seen several times in this town: cursing or swearing is not spiritual. Really. That's not my experience. Now, we're in conflict. We're in conflict over something that's a core element of this program. In this program, I'm encouraged to share my experience, my strength, my hope, what happened to me, what it was like, what happened, what it's like now. And so I'm going to tell you that I found God through swearing and having it out with him and cussing him out. And you're telling me that's not spiritual. So in other words, you're telling me your version of spirituality. Aren't you violating the tradition that we're allowed to have our own conception of a higher power? That nobody in the program should be preaching at someone else, that they're supposed to believe a certain way? Isn't that a fundamental concept in our program, particularly for newcomers who come in very sketchy about God? And then now you're going to tell them, oh, but this is like church. You're not allowed to cuss in here. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit of news. Maybe your bottom was a little bit higher, but you get some of the people that I get in group and that I have dealt with as a professional who come from the streets and prison. And that's their language. That's how they know how to express themselves. And they're already coming in saying, I'm not going to say a word because I don't talk. I'm not comfortable sharing my business. And then we beg them. We say, please, newcomers, you're the most important person in the room. Please share your experience. We want to hear from you. And God forbid that newcomer should get up and accidentally say, fuck. And then some old timer has to come after the meeting and say, we really don't talk like that around here. So the newcomer at one moment felt good that he's being welcomed and he's being supported. And then a half second later, he's told, don't come around here no more. That's what he hears. I'm not saying that's what the guy said. That's what he hears. And he doesn't go back. And maybe he never goes back again. This is so prevalent at some meetings that I heard one of my greatest truth tellers that I've ever sponsored telling their story at a meeting of about 200 people, maybe 300 people in the room. And then we were separated in two sides with a big long row down the middle. And my newcomer was a beautiful truth teller. He would just speak the truth. And that's all we're required to do. My sponsor told me that when you tell your story, speak your truth. Don't go outside the lines of that. Just speak your truth. They can either like it or not like it, but it's my story. That's another reason why I don't apologize for speaking about my drug use. I don't overemphasize it. I'm not going to beat you over the head with it, but I'm also not going to apologize that I might have smoked a joint. It's part of my story. It's going to help somebody. Get over it. Doesn't threaten the whole of the program for me to tell you what happened to me. I'm that small. I'm not that big. But in the middle of this meeting, my boy's talking, and this old timer comes walking down the middle of the aisle. I have never seen this in 41 years of recovery, that somebody had the nerve, the gall, the balls to get up and interrupt somebody who's speaking. And he walks all the way up to the podium. My guy's just sitting there watching while he's talking, going, what, is that place on fire? What's going on? And I don't know, he thinks he's going to lean in the microphone and say, guy in the blue Chevy, you left your car lights on. He didn't know what this guy's going to say. And he leans into his ear and he goes, yeah, we don't curse around here. And then he turned around and walked down the middle of the road, bow up in front of everybody. Total eyesore. I mean, everybody's aware of it and seen this thing happen, but didn't know what he said. And my guy takes a moment, pauses, and goes, so any fucking way. And he goes right back into his story. And I fucking, the integrity. That's what I would call it. The integrity of him not abusing it. He wasn't being over excessive. He was just speaking his truth. And nobody said that in the preamble of the meeting. Nobody warned us. Nobody this or that. And the guy interrupted his talk which I thought was very self-serving of the guy. And I always get a kick out of any old timer out there, and I challenge you guys. I'm one of you. I'm 41 freaking years sober, motherfuckers. Don't tell me I don't know you old timers. You all get offended at stupid shit that you walk out of a meeting. How strong is your program? I've heard stories of guys not liking what somebody was sharing or the way they're sharing it, and they just get upset and they have to go out and cry, walk out of the meeting. Dude, where's your love and tolerance? Isn't that our code? Love and tolerance. Now, parameters, obviously, there's certain things, just like we disagree in politics about the extremes, in the middle. In the middle, we all agree about some basics. Look, I'm not going to curse around children. We need to protect children's innocence. Let's try not to corrupt them. I do not enjoy at all videos where the baby says fuck. I don't enjoy that at all. I don't think that's funny. I just say, please, just let them have their innocence for a year before we ruin them. Number two, I don't believe in overusing curse words. Unless you're emphatic, making a point, and you're passionate, and it carries with the emotion. But if you overuse them, they lose their power. So if I'm sponsoring somebody and every other word out of their mouth is F or whatever, I'm like, I'll go to them and I'll say, if you could tune that, and I'll use it in a helpful way, your message is going to have much more impact because you're overusing it, so it's kind of lost its impact. But if you save it for a couple here and there, it's going to carry more weight, and you're going to have a stronger message. But I'm not criticizing them. I'm not telling them they're doing it wrong. I'm just offering a tool if they want to take advantage of it. So, all right. So, all right. I had to collect my thoughts because there's so many things I still want to say. My biggest trigger with a lot of this, it seems like hypocrisy in some ways. Now, I know a lot of old-timers that might take offense at curse words at meetings who will then go home and turn on premium cable TV and watch something with way more language and much more of it than they would have heard at that meeting from a newcomer. Or they'll listen to a comedian who does the same. Or maybe in their own life they talk that way outside, but they don't talk that way in a meeting. And I will tell you what our co-founder said about that. Bill Wilson wrote a lot of... When he was in his later years, he wrote these articles for the Grapevine magazine, and a lot of them, not all of them, are collected in the book as Bill sees it. And he cautioned about the trappings of church, and that AA need to be always careful not to fall into that. Trappings mean these are certain customs and putting on a show, putting on a dress and makeup and just acting a certain way that's like, then we're going to discourage authenticity. We're going to discourage the new person from feeling comfortable when they're coming in beat up from the floor up and maybe they're not dressed right and they might smell a little bit, but they don't feel comfortable in the meeting because our shit doesn't stink because we're now saints, And so, AA has this long tradition saying we're not a religion. And a lot of people feel that way out there. You'll hear a lot of newcomers say, well, that God business, I think, is a cult or it's a religion. And it's neither. It's supposed to be a safe place where you can come and have people really understand you and relate to what you're sharing and support you. But I will always defend the newcomer, and there's nothing else that will get my ire up quicker than when a newcomer is shut down or a newcomer gets kicked out or it doesn't feel like they belong. So let's be careful. Let's try and have a little perspective about, why are we being so offended if they happen to say the wrong word and blah, blah, blah. Now, what does this mean for you in your recovery? And we'll end on some of this. Very often in my group, especially when we were in person, we would get to a person's first step, and that's when they're sharing their story. And at a certain point, they either break down or they just become numb and shut down. And ideally, they'll start crying because the weight of everything they've been through and they've just shared will be like in their face. And they'll be like, oh, my God. And, now they have emotion. It takes them a long time to get there. We have to break through a lot of walls. But many times the person will be just stuck in place and they just can't even talk. And everybody in the group can feel it. Everybody in the group can feel their pain, can feel their anger, can feel all that stuff that just needs to come out. So what we would do when we were in person is we would encourage them. I'd say, look, I just want you to do this. I want you to put down your book. I want you to get comfortable in your chair. And I just want you to lean forward and just yell, fuck, as loud as you can. And they can't. They're just muzzled. And I'm like, no, promise you, it'll make me. And the whole group's jumping in and we're all like, yeah, say fuck. We want you to say fuck as loud as you can. And when we used to do this, when people would finally break and scream it, because I'd have to demonstrate sometimes because that takes the sting off so they don't look so goofy, the groups next door would wonder if somebody was being killed. And we'd have people looking inside the window and wondering what we're doing in there. But it became another one of those breakthrough tools like I had in my own recovery, that I need to get them past this block so that they can open up this channel and start expressing their true feelings. And we have a very dear friend of ours, an older lady that we all know and love, I won't name her name, who was a school teacher. And she was definitely not allowed. She had to have a real strong limiter on over not saying any of those words in class, right? Obviously with children. And but she needed to get that out. It's kind of like, I don't mean to be crude, but it's kind of like an enema. You just got to get it out. And so we got her to do it. And I could see the shift of the emotions coming out. I could see the shift of breathing, being able to be myself. And today, I'm very happy to report that when she curses in group, and it's limited, but it's appropriate when needed, Travis will put in the chat, there's my girl. Because we all know how far she's come to just be herself. Honesty. What does it take for me to get to a place in life where I can just be myself and be okay being myself? Not where I'm intentionally trying to hurt you or be rude to you, but I'm not going to apologize for, I might let a curse word fly every now and then. If you can't handle that, I probably don't want to know you. Because you know what I heard a speaker say one time? There are certain words in the language of English that nothing else will get the feelings out better than that. That's why I tell my patient to yell fuck as loud as I can. It's just a perfect word for that. Don't ask me why. It's just the way it fell in the odds. And he was talking about, imagine a guy that goes to work that day and he finds out his job's evaporated. The company's dissolved. The heads of the company stole all the money. They were cooking the books. It's all a Ponzi scheme. And he's not only lost his job, but he's lost his retirement because that was vaporized too. And he's about ready, close to retirement. So he's lost his job. He's lost his retirement. He comes home and his wife tells him, I've been thinking about this a while. I just don't love you anymore. I need a divorce. And she walks out the door. And meanwhile, the dog is looking up at him and the dog is shit on the rug. And he's having the worst day of his life. What is that guy going to say to get that out? Is he going to say, gosh, gee, Willie, workers, darn it, I can't believe that happened? Is that satisfying? Any human being out there I'm talking to, is that satisfying? Gosh, gee, I wish they hadn't taken my job away. Now I have no retirement, darn it. I just don't think it's realistic. I don't think it's real. It's not real. And then we go see all these mob movies with Robert De Niro and all these guys where they say the word so much, it might as well be in every sentence. I don't get it. It's a duality. It's a hypocrisy. And again, you're welcome to choose your own way in recovery. The only reason I bring all this stuff up is to get you thinking outside the box. That's the whole purpose of this podcast, is to talk about topics we don't talk about. I don't hear anybody else talking about this. I've been through this room 41 years. I've never heard anybody bring up why are we setting limits on newcomers and what's our policy in this group. And I'm happy to say that in my group, we tell people to be themselves. We do have many times, and Dan will verify this, where the newcomer will let one slip. And they go, oh, I'm sorry. And then we're all like, just be yourself, man. And you can see the weight fall off them. Because they're at their first meeting, nervous as hell to sit up in front of everybody and talk. So, we got to be very careful, man. This is a very precious thing we have. And it's precious only if we bring in new people. And there's many things that can threaten that. There's the cursing thing. There's the setting too many limits on newcomers. But I'll tell you a story, and then I'll end on this, get Dan's feedback in here. I had a patient just this morning tell me that they went to a meeting and they've been needing to go to a meeting for a long time. I've been working on them to get you back to meetings. We need to get you back to meetings, but there's always that. Every time you relapse, the hole's harder to dig out of, right? And I haven't been able to get this person into action. And they came in and they told me, you know what? I said, fuck it. I needed to go to a meeting. Chris been got me to go to a meeting. I'm going to find a meeting near my house. And he found one just a few blocks away out in Shepherdsville. And he's very excited to go to this meeting. And he noticed he was beginning to feel more and more uncomfortable as the meeting went along, and he didn't know why. And I get to hear these reports on the daily. I'm running like a lab experiment where I send all my little agents out. Some of them have no experience with AA at all. And then I get to hear their direct feedback the next day about how was that group? How was this group? What was your experience? How did they treat you as a newcomer? Were you welcomed? Did anybody say anything to you? I hear it all. And this guy says that the speaker who let him off started talking about Jesus. Okay, why? He goes, I don't know. He said there needs to be more Jesus in the program. And he going on to say, I think there needs to be more Jesus in the schools. And he just vented off his little personal vendetta about Jesus this and Jesus that. And my newcomer, being smart, he said, well, maybe this is this guy. Maybe he's just got screwed loose. We'll see what the next guy says. And then the next guy picked up and said pretty much the same thing. And then the next guy picked up and said pretty much the same thing. And they're talking about Jesus in this meeting. And he's going, where am I? Am I at a meeting or I'm in church? I'm confused. And he said there was about 6 other newcomers in there that were looking around kind of not knowing what to say, and he just felt more and more uncomfortable. And this is where he was at. He said, I don't not believe in God. I just don't know where I am with it right now. I wasn't prepared for all that. I'm new. I got some issues. And I explained it to him the way it was explained to me. We're allowed to talk about our personal views on spirituality when asked. If someone comes to me and says, what do you think and what do you feel? If I feel comfortable, I share it with them. If the topic is the third step and we're talking about your own conceptions, then the kind of ground rules are there that, okay, we all understand that you're allowed to have your own conception and this guy's might be different than that guy's, and that's okay. But when it's all one group saying this thing, I always tell the example I was taught was if a soldier from Iraq who's lost all of his buddies over there and not one survived but him, and he comes into his first meeting trying to save his life with PTSD and alcoholism. And some unthinking person gets up and says, I'd like to thank my personal savior, Muhammad, for giving me my sobriety and saving my life. Now, it seems like an innocuous thing, but that newcomer is going to go bing, 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 bing. And none of us know what that's like. Not one of you, unless you're a veteran, been in battle. And he's going to leave and say, I don't belong there. And he might jump off a bridge because he's got no other option. He doesn't know where else to go. So, I even get sketchy at meetings where they talk about God too much because I want to explain to the newcomer that we don't mean God, the old God. We don't mean the religious stuff that you don't like. It's just a word. We mean whatever works for you. But I don't know, man. I've always been, you can put it on my tombstone, what makes the doorway bigger for the newcomer to get in? So I've lived my whole life like that as a professional. I've dedicated everything to that process. And throw stones if you want, but I think these are things worth talking about. So, Dan, any thoughts and ideas about any of this stuff I just spewed out there?
Oh, I agree with you completely on all accounts. I do, I get a little sketchy when somebody is like overusing their cussing. I just get lost because I can't hear what they're saying because of that'll get me. Now, do I care? I'm not going to leave the meeting. I'm not going to say anything to the dude.
It doesn't offend you.
I'm not going to do anything about it. But internally, when somebody is cussing, like over cussing, I'm like, golly, man. And I think the same way, like, a dude's got a good message, but it's buried in that. And there's people that won't hear you because of that. And even me, I'm having trouble hearing you because of that. And there's perfect places to use it, and just like you said, I don't know. I was taught I didn't cuss around my mom. We just didn't cuss around mom. I didn't cuss around grandma. You know, there's people that in our
Did you ever
family.
make a mistake? 'Cause
oh, sure.
I said damn around my grandma at about age 11, and she reared back like she was going to take my head off. And I was like, oh, I just made a huge mistake.
Again, I never really had too much of that go on. Now, I do remember one time I said, I don't remember even what word I said, and I was within reach of my mom, and she slapped me on the butt. But it, you know, it never was like a huge thing. My dad would joke around. Now, see, when I say cussing, like hell and damn, some people would classify that as cussing. I almost put that in the gee whiz, golly willikers kind of department.
Yeah, agreed.
Personally.
I agree.
But my dad would.
I mean, it's G-rated. You can kind of say hell in a G-rated movie.
Dad would do it in a goofy thing. He'd say, he would, like, hell and damn when something wouldn't go his way, you know. and now those words would be used wherever most of the time, you know. So I say, you know, that's where it's another thing about, like, what do you consider swearing, right? I guess the big F word is the one that's probably at the top, and there probably is a few other ones that could get up into that kind of neighborhood as far as offending certain people. But there's nothing more effective than a good cuss word used when you need to. And, you know, I let them fly when I need to. You know, I mean, I can just the never-ending domino of them because it does. It releases energy. You can feel it. You feel better afterwards. You're like, all right, cool. You know, something, whatever, you know, whether it's in traffic or anything like that, to go ahead and let them fly loose.
And particularly with your supports, with the people you trust, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, if I had a sponsor, and I know the phrase, and sometimes, believe me, I thought about it. I'm very open-minded in my recovery that I will consider what's being brought to my table. So when I hear the phrase, like, well, we leave the language of the gutter behind. And I'm like, okay, do you do that 100%? I'd like to follow you around every day, first of all. But I'm not sure I could relate to a sponsor like that who's going to be dinging me every time I say the wrong word when I'm just venting. Yeah. I'm just trying to get off my chest what I need to say.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. You know, even one of my big mentors doesn't, you know, he'll talk about I think that very statement has come out of him. But, you know, he put me through an exercise where he was wanting me to vent my anger, and he said, dude, I have been here, and here. You are not going to offend me, so you let them fly. I actually want you to. Nice. You know, so it was interesting to see because I've only heard from him saying that other way most of the time. And in this situation, he's like, yeah, turn them loose, brother. And he was like cheering me on, you know, whenever I was letting them fly like that. And it took a second to be able to do that in front of him, too, in a way. It was almost like cussing in front of Grandma for a second. But then he'd give me permission, you know, and so I let him fly freely. And there just isn't any, you know, if you're in a meeting and you can't handle that, you need to take a look at some things. And like I said, you know, I've seen people walk out of meetings because of that. You know, get up and leave. Heck, we had it happen at one of our favorite yearly things that we did. Now, again, we were in his house, so I get it in that regard. But it was also he knew who we were.
He knew the product he was getting.
Yeah. And we were invited. You know,
that's a good point.
It wasn't. We didn't surprise him.
And again, you know, you get to vote with your feet. So, I mean, when I went through that whole looking back on that, it's like, you know, he has a right to feel the way he feels. So if you don't like it, that's okay. But anybody that I draw the line on intervening with a newcomer. And trying to
absolutely
trying to guide them. Like you have to be on your P's and Q's when you're in a meeting. No, this should be the one place where you can lay down your entire burden and just be yourself for an hour. Because, you know, when you leave this door, first thing you're going to do is put your armament back on. You're going to put your weaponry back on so that nobody knows the real you or can see the real you.
Yep. And, you know, higher power and cussing are two big ones, too. Because, you know, and I hear that, you know, that people, a lot of people don't want to hear your Bible quotes. You know, they don't want to hear your Jesus stuff, you know. And you can, it's the same thing, you know. I mean, if somebody says that, and it's appropriate to the topic of the meeting. There's a little bit difference than the trying to put your higher power on somebody else.
Exactly.
That's where the line gets drawn. If people say, well, this is it. This is what I feel, or we need to be more. We all need more Jesus in our lives.
Isn't it funny how you phrase it? It's like you just did there. How do you need more Jesus in our lives? You could say something like, "Well, the Bible teaches," and then immediately our guards go up, going, "Oh, here we go."
Yep.
Or it could be, there's this one teaching. It just happens to be in the Bible, but I think it's very profound. But it fits here, and that's a totally different approach. It is.
I quote the Bible fairly often to people. There's some things that says that I believe are truth, and I will use it when appropriate. I'm not going to beat you over the head with the Bible or drag you to church or anything like that. But that whole dogma thing and the whole that whole thing where people come in and they get that feeling that we're a religious group, that's where, and you almost can't help that at some level, right? Because people just can't like separate. They haven't been allowed to separate those two things yet. And so they come in the beginning and think that AA is a religious organization. And this is just like church. And I wondered, when you were talking about your guy, if you go to Celebrate Recovery, that's what you're going to hear.
I know, but it wasn't A. I mean,
okay,
I checked that with him.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you accidentally went to a Celebrate Recovery meeting, that's what
because I told him he should go back and tell the old timer to change the name of the meeting.
Yeah.
But again, it's just those limits we have on our language, and language is so important. And me being a writer, I'm very much into the power of words and having just the right word for the right thing. And sometimes you're right, a good curse word is just the right word for the right situation. And we're trying to free our newcomers up so that they can start letting their truths out, because they have never done that.
Yeah.
And when you said they can't separate those two, what we're talking about, folks, is spirituality and religion. Just religion likes to claim that they own spirituality, but spirituality's been around way before they were. And you get to develop your own. That's one of the what's the greatest thing about recovery? Is one of those things that I get to develop my own spirituality. Again, you all may be wondering, so those that know me will be like, well, this is something Chris talks about, and he wanted to talk about it today. I really wanted to bring it up for just discussion, to just sort of be like, we don't maybe talk about this enough. I don't know. I could even see somebody writing Bill in the old days at the central office and saying, Bill, we've been having this issue with cussing in the meeting, and we don't know what stand you would take on it. What do you think? And you know what he would say? He said this in almost every letter.
Everything.
You're perfectly free to do whatever you feel is best, of course.
Yeah. The Seekers meeting, the first meeting I ever went to, they were in a church, and they asked in the reading to please be respectful of your language. We're in a church, but there was never any. It kind of tamped it down, but you was still going to hear it, and it's not going. You weren't going to get chastised if you let the F-bomb fly or anything like that. And it was just a real lightly held thing. It wasn't a big deal, but they just kind of asked for it. I think at some level it was a respect to, like, we owe a great deal, like our church, man. They let us come in there, and they treat us pretty well, and we don't want to do anything to mess that up.
Agreed 100%. And this is what's tricky, though, for the newcomer. They're like, but it's in a church. So
it's hard to tell.
Just a tradition that these are the places that have been friendly, thank God, to addicts and alcoholics to let us have our meetings there. Now, the tradition is, and I'm always big on, let's go to the book and see what's always been done. You're paying rent for a room.
Yeah.
So ideally, if the door's closed, what happens in that meeting is what happens in that meeting. It doesn't leave that room. It's not part of the church. It's part of a room that we're renting in that church. And I believe advanced, spiritually well teachers who run those churches know that that's what alcoholics are going to be talking about. Yeah. And that helps them get well. That helps them become better people to be able to spew out that stuff. But I do sometimes wonder myself, we don't close those doors, and our voices carry.
Yeah, they
and
do.
I've wondered, maybe we should be closing those doors.
That's a good point.
Go out into
That's
the
a really
hallway.
good point, yeah.
Maybe we should bring that up this next week.
And for the most, we probably should talk about that. For the most part, they were in those places in the off hours.
Thank God. Because if they heard some of the stuff we talk about.
A lot of them tend to be like, in the basement or far away from, we're not like out in where the doors are leading to the lobby or anything.
We're not in the
like
chapel unless we have to be.
Yeah, unless they put us in there. So for the most part, in meetings I've been to, we're fairly well insulated in there too. And people aren't, even though might be cussing, nobody's yelling. Except for, I guess, when we go, are these extravagant promises?
So we have a tradition in our group when we're reading the promises, and at the end of it, it says, are these extravagant promises? We think not. But before the guy can say we think not, we yell out, shit, fuck no, or whatever. We yell, fuck no, damn no, whatever. Hell no. It's just having fun in recovery again.
Yeah.
But what have you found with your newcomers, Dan, about how bottled up they are and how hard it is to get them to talk? And if they can see that you're like them. Now, I learned a huge lesson with this when I started my professional life working down at JDEC. This is one of the most toughest facilities that's ever been in Kentucky. And most of the people there are indigent. Most of the people have already lost their kids for good, permanently. They're not getting their kids back. And they've been to prison many times. They don't have their teeth. They're in terrible shape. They might be impacted from opiates, and we have to send them over to U of L Emergency Hospital to have their behind cleaned out physically, digitally, but hand, because they can't take a poop. I mean, this is a tough population. And I go in there, Mr. White Guy, with my khakis on. And I'm like, okay, guys, gee willikers, aren't we happy to be sober today? And I, because of the program, because of AA and the people who have taught me to be authentic, I went in just talking real. I just talked like I talk. And I actually pride myself on that. I tell my patients, you could run across me at a black tie event or at a farmer's hoedown or working in the fields. I'm the same guy. I'm not going to put on airs and act like I don't know you or be all like, I'll be polite if I'm supposed to be black tie. I'm not supposed to be cursing and shit. That's fine. But I'm not going to let it restrain my personality or who I am. And so me being able to be authentic, I would build a rapport with them much faster. And the authority stuff would be thrown out the window that this is the counselor. I'm not going to tell him nothing, Yeah. And people open up fast once they feel like they can trust you. So your experience with that as a sponsor?
Same thing, yeah. And, pretty easy for me to get, through to people pretty quick. Seems to be a little bit of a gift or something to be able to do that. But one of the things I do like to say, when we were talking, do I fucking sound spiritual to you?
It disarms them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like the first day that Shane was in group. And I'm like, how you doing, man? Because he's just sitting over there by the door. He's all excited to be an outpatient. He's like getting his sobriety. He's going to change his whole life. He's just got the big files. He said, I'm good. I go, you're good, huh? Yeah, I'm good. And I said, you're not fucking good. You're in the middle of a fucking hospital. You're in a mental hospital, man. Your life's in ruins. You're going to lose your family, motherfucker. It's not good. And he looked at me and he goes, you're right. Like I gained his trust, like just from that. And I don't even know why I said that. See, that was higher power cussing through me. I wasn't even aware at the moment. That just came out like instantly. So again, it's tools. It's just tools. And, we as society, we get hung up on things with our little taboos. But I don't know. I'm not asking anybody out there to be comfortable with this, so don't misunderstand me. You're allowed to be exactly wherever you are on this topic. But think about it. That's all. Think about how it's affecting the newcomers that are coming to your group. If your group is one of those that has one of those signs up, maybe you should bring that up and put it in your preamble that we prefer if you don't cuss, so they know what they're getting into.
Yeah. And if you don't want to cuss, don't cuss.
Yeah, it's your program,
and
right?
Just let other people say what they want to say.
I personally would not want anybody in my life that never cusses. I just could not trust such a person. Those are the people, in my feeling as a therapist, I've seen this, where they stuff so much stuff that they're going to take out an Uzi and shoot a crowd. So I'm worried about those people. Anything else on the topic? I think we've exhausted it thoroughly.
I think so.
Okay. So every week we have a different thing here. We just bring you food for thought and things to ponder on. If you have any thoughts yourself, or you want to cuss us out maybe, I would think that would be funny. So please send us an email at iam12, the word recovery, @gmail.com. That's iam12recovery @gmail.com. leave us a comment if you want to cuss and see if YouTube will blank you out. We'd be happy to see that. But just be yourself. That's the goal of recovery. We got to find out who you are first, and then can you share that with the world? Can you let your walls down? Just be that person. So we love you. Come back, see us next week, and we'll keep on doing this for you. Pass on the word. If anybody you think will get a kick out of this topic, send it to a grumpy old timer and see if you can get them riled up. We'd like to end in the Serenity Prayer, so if you'd like to join us in that, please feel free. All right. And the fucking Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. You die if you don't. Woo-hoo! We love you to death. Keep trucking. It's worth it. And we'll see you next time. Peace out.
I definitely have said, God grant me the fucking serenity.
It worked too, right?